Hey, this is David Rovix with another weekly episode of This Week with David Rovix, where we play music and talk to people who are doing notable things around town or somewhere in the world. And today we are joined by Rob Martineau with Ask Me 189 here in Portland, Oregon. And we are broadcasting on KBOO's Facebook page, as well as on the Facebook page of Popular Resistance and my YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch pages as well. And anybody who's watching on any of those platforms, feel free to share the broadcast. Of course, we're talking about 4 people at the moment, but the numbers will grow as we, and then we'll share the broadcast later and all that live stream podcast stuff. And Rob, it's it's an eventful moment in Portland labor history and in labor history in the United States generally at the moment as the pandemic is going and there's strikes happening all over the country and that might be going on here in Portland soon. And can you bring us up to speed on the situation with municipal workers in this parsimonious municipality? I think the words go well together. Parsimonious, that's what I've been saying. It's a parsimonious municipality, and and it needs to be less parsimonious and more generous. And it's just setting the stage for anybody who's watching from outside of Portland. This is the most rent burdened city in the United States. My rent and the rent for the 50% of the people in this city who are renters is going up oftentimes by 10% a year. 10% a year, and they're talking about offering you a 1.6% increase in cost of living. What's the situation?
Well, first, I'd like to start off by saying it's been amazing to watch, a beautiful time in labor and a necessary time. And I am heartened by people across this country and certainly in our state and just metro Portland regional area who stood up for themselves and said, we will not go slowly into poverty, that we will stand up and be valued as workers, as the people that make things happen. And that's where we're at as president of AFSCME Local 189 and the District Council of Trade Unions. And I want to explain that just a little bit. The DCTU, as we're called, is a council of 6 unions that bargain a contract with the city. We are the largest bargaining unit in the city of Portland with just about 1,200 city employees across every bureau in the city. And that doesn't just include AFSCME 189, but the IBEW, the machinists, the operating engineers, plumbers, and painters. We all of those that I talk about, you hear about separate contracts or union halls that they may have, but in this instance, we bargain as a collective in the city of Portland. And so where we're at in our DCT negotiations is we've gone through all of the normal things that happen under PECPA, which is the Public Employee Collective Bargaining Act. And we have reached impasse. We reached impasse on December 20th. We were slow to move to each step. We bargained longer than the prescribed 150 days. We've been in mediation for over 3 months when 14 days and 1 meeting is what's required. And we've met numerous times, probably 10 or 12 times we've met and continue to try and reach agreement without a disruption to services and without a labor action, a labor stoppage and self-remedy, which for those that don't know means strike. I think that's what commonly people think. And we don't march towards that lightly. That's a major step, and it's nothing that we are spoiling for. We're not trying to get there. Getting to a strike is the easiest possible thing. You just say no, and that's where you end up. That's not what we're doing. We're really trying to find a way that the city can value their workforce in a meaningful way and allow us as Portlanders to really live, work, play, volunteer, and engage in the community of the city we serve. And that it really is about dignity and being valued for the work we perform.
And how many city workers would you say actually live in the city of Portland? I mean, at this point, I would imagine that it's a minority.
I would have to probably follow up with you on exact numbers. I do know that it has declined. We have certainly seen folks economically displaced, moved further out east, south. I mean, in nearly every direction. Certainly, there's a significant number of city employees that live across the river in Vancouver. So yes, over time, as I hear about folks who are working to own a home or enjoy that housing stability, I find that it's more and more often further away. I don't have an exact number for
Yeah.
you, but it,
Yeah, sure, but it's yeah, of course.
yeah,
Coming up with such a statistic on the fly is one thing, but the general trend is clear, right? People are leaving the city constantly, and it's just a very transient place because of how unaffordable it becomes year after year, and yet and then in the situation of people working for the city. I mean, a lot of people might expect that people going into civil service or people working for government agencies, there's a lot of a set of assumptions that a lot of people might tend to make about good benefits, good health care, good salary, good retirement. What's the real situation? I get the impression is very different. We're talking about increases in salaries that do not keep up with the cost of living.
absolutely. And I want to be clear that when we're talking about bargaining, we're talking about the totality of our agreement, the totality of compensation.
I
So
noticed on the page, I mean, people who want to get into the details can look at the Ask Me page and get into the really fine nitty gritty details about like dozens and dozens of different aspects of this whole negotiations process. Just in case people want to really geek out on it, it is about far more than just salaries. Yeah.
yeah, there are certain certifications, there are other recognitions that our employees, our members are expected to have, and recognition for some of those that we do think is really important. Things around commercial drivers, things around shift differentials. I mean, there's a known impact to a person's life, health, work-life balance when you work a second or third shift, and
Yes.
appropriate premiums for those are a very important piece of this. Keeping pace with inflation is important, but the reality is wages have declined. Wages have not kept pace with the wages, regardless of and inflation has eclipsed that year over year, and we're seeing under 5% unemployment. There, we are at full employment. To some extent, I understand there's so much value in public service, and so many of the people really enjoy the work they do in serving Portland. But you come to a point where it's just not fair to yourself or your family to continue to work for less. And when I say total compensation, we do have a benefit package that includes, a healthcare package and a retirement package. But if you're making the wages to buy those things individually, now we're talking about total compensation. And when you can make more money at a different employer and then pay for those benefits separately, or they may be included at some other level, that bottom line, city workers, city employees, our membership are not willing to go backwards and see the work that we've done to work together to serve the city be eroded. And that's really where we're at. And it is up to city council. City council is the decision maker. They are who approves the budget, and their agents at the table through human resources and labor relations have been clear that they have kept them up to speed. I absolutely take them at their word. And so for us, it's part of the electeds in this city recognizing that Portland's a union town and they need to value their workforce appropriately.
And at City Hall, there's going to be a rally at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Speaking of City Council, and we're coming into the third year of the pandemic here, and so many of the workers we're talking about working for the municipality, working for the city, the county, the state as well. They're what we call essential workers, and I wonder how much do you think essential workers have been actually awarded for their service in ways other than applause?
Well, that's actually one of the things that's very much on the table. We had negotiated language in our contract in 2017 that said if you are directed to come to work in a time when the mayor or their designee has closed the city, that you would receive equal compensation for that. In some of these situations, folks are told to stay home and they would receive that compensation. In some cases, they may be able to work from home. In some cases, it's for their own safety. Commonly, this is snow events, but that could be for any event. Certainly a pandemic or epidemic. It could be an act of war. I would say we do represent numerous folks in the police bureau in non-sworn capacities. It also could be the big shake when, eventually that will happen. And we have members who are absolutely essential in building inspectors is a great example of that. We want to know that buildings are safe for reentry after an earthquake. So there are so many ways in which people can be essential depending on the circumstance. And yes, DCTU members do that work across the city in nearly every bureau.
And
So
as you mentioned with the earthquake things being up to earthquake code and such, there's such a intersection between the rights of workers to all the different aspects, many of the different aspects that are in the contract you guys are negotiating. There's such an intersection between those things and the safety of the public as well in so many ways and the safety of the workers as well. I mean, I'm thinking of the tornado that just destroyed so much of Kentucky and so many of those non-union workers who had to stay on the job because they were worried about they were told in point blank they'd be fired if they left the assembly line in the candle factory and sought shelter from the storm, and then they died. And that's a real direct connection between the sort of not being in a union and the kinds of consequences that we all would rather avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so often I think unions get characterized as about the money, but it really is not just about the wages, but those benefits and those working conditions. And unions, yes, are born out of economics, but more so out of safety. And that's of critical importance to us when we are negotiating. Certainly things like reentry programs. And as we start to return to work, what will that look like? Vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And I hate to say it, even versus. I mean, there are many people with reasonable and appropriate exceptions to a mandate, but how are employees allowed to remain safe and comfortable doing the critical work of the city, providing those services and not fear for their lives? No one should have to fear for their lives by going to do their job. And delivering those services is critically important. And it really is essential to the livability of Portland in so many ways. Certainly, we represent a large number of folks in the Portland Water Bureau, from Bull Run, where the treatment occurs, to the maintenance, the repair on the main breaks, and even the installation of new services and fire suppression systems. As Portland, frankly, struggles to grow housing, we're doing everything we can. We've passed a bond. Our folks in the Housing Bureau are working just as furiously as they can to make sure that good, affordable housing is coming online. And our people in the development services, BDS, we want Bureau of Development Services. I know I've heard, folks in construction complain about permits or the permitting process, but frankly, you want to know that structure is habitable. You want to know that the electrical and the plumbing and all of the systems in a dwelling are up to code and appropriately sized. And these are the services that we provide every day, and that's
absolutely.
There's no
right?
shame in being compensated appropriately for the work that we provide to our city.
And there's a long-standing problem of not being compensated and not being not being basically first-class citizens in this society as city workers, and so many of the different jobs for the workers you represent. I mean, there's at what point is this progressive city council that we always have, because the city council in this city is always progressive? I don't think we've had. I don't know when the last time is we've had a city council that represented itself as anything other than progressive. But it seems to me that there's certain notions of progressivism that need to be reflected in how government workers are paid. I mean, if government workers are not paid with the kind of with the kind of respect and dignity and numbers that would be expected of the job in the private sector, then what does that say? I mean, I think it seems like government workers should be the baseline rather than oftentimes the worst paid of the people are often leaving jobs to go find other jobs in the private sector, and that doesn't seem like that should be the constant process.
Well, we do see that, and I've seen it a lot in the last during since the pandemic. Certainly, a lot of folks have changed where they work. They've resigned, left the city. Um, that is occurring, and it continues to occur. I I do want to be clear that the city is a good place to work and generally can be a very good employer. I will also say that the unions in the city have the often tough task of helping the city be the employer they think they are or that they want to be. And so helping get them to a place where workers feel uh, valued as they do that work is really at the forefront of what we do. My intent isn't to beat upon the city with this, but the decision maker lies with city council, and it is often too easy to ignore your own labor force while looking at the other challenges in Portland. I won't say anything to diminish the importance of the work that's happening around unhoused, unsheltered folks in our community. That's really of critical importance. Changes that are occurring in some of the police response, Portland emergency response, and some of the other things to really help folks who are in crisis. That is critical work, and we also support and help in that work. And so it is a matter of priorities, but I do think that it is time for city council to reevaluate how they are prioritizing and to the level they're prioritizing their workforce. There's a lot of work to do here in this city, and our members are here to help. We're doing the work now. We're trying. No one I know goes to work to just get by or mail it in. We're trying to do everything we can to improve, and we realize we're in a challenging time and have been. But at some point, it is us and our families who we need to consider as we continue our employment.
Rob, I don't want to put you on the spot with big philosophical questions here, but it seems like as the city does ramp up its response to the housing crisis in so many ways, and as there are so many more efforts to try to deal with this constantly escalating problem, not only of course in Portland but all over this country, and it's a problem that way long predates the pandemic. And it just seems like no matter how much more affordable housing gets built, and no matter how much more sort of efforts at city funded initiatives there are, the problem just gets worse. And it just seems like what one thing that constantly is happening is the rise in the cost of housing, right? And what do you think? Do you stop and think about the broad picture here in terms of, like, if you could wave a magic wand, what kinds of changes would be made that could actually get ahead of the ball here in terms of the ever worsening housing crisis? You think about rent control.
Wow, I will say that is a giant philosophical question, and there are so many directions to go on that. I would also say that as a union, that's not a place where I can speak to personally. I could go a lot of directions on that. This clearly we have to find a way. We have started to fund it in a meaningful way. We've passed housing bonds. We are looking for better solutions. I will applaud the city council's efforts to look for new ways in camps, in just many of the programs are trying to initiate to create a space, to create the wraparound services. I'm glad that I'm not the one that has to come up with those ideas, because it seems like every idea that comes up, whoever says it becomes the villain about the one thing it can't do or the two things it can't do, when it may solve 100, but the 105 things that had to be done weren't. And there's so much competing, I guess, often just rhetoric around and how we solve this. I'm glad that that is not the main focus of what I do. For my
Mm-hmm.
work for the city and with membership, I am glad to see council looking and trying, collaborating with the county. I don't know. It does feel like a constant pedal. The more we put in, the more we need, and that's where I do think that council needs to re-examine priorities. And I don't know the scope of the problem in dollars, but I feel like if we have $1 billion problem and you throw 100 million at it,
Right?
what improvement do you have? Have you just smoked 100 million? And what
Yeah.
could that 100 million have done otherwise? I mean, in supporting people in the city, and if I say specifically city employees, there are people that live and work and volunteer and really create and help aid in the uplift of those in their community. And so there's an opportunity for the city to be a model employer rather than reluctantly brought to the table.
You know, I think in the popular imagination, to the extent that people have an image of what a union organizer is like on the popular imagination, it's a firebrand standing on a soapbox talking about working class solidarity. But in reality, I find that one of the things that characterizes union organizers oftentimes is their ability to be extremely diplomatic in their communication, and that I think it always impresses me, and I just wonder if you have something to say about that. I mean, in terms of the fact that you guys are constantly in some kind of a position to be bridging divides of so many kinds, working with membership who vote for different political parties. To take one example of a divide that exists in this society, and yet they managed to be in the same union, and working in favor of the same basic interests. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that situation.
Well,
And
I can appreciate the recognition of that. I think at the baseline, being effective is more important than being loud. And I absolutely have been to the rallies and been cheering and pumping fists, and that's an important component. Absolutely, turnout and engagement of our community and our membership in support of these campaigns is critical. But at the end of the day, it's not about a combative relationship. It's about getting to an agreement, and our employer continues to be our employer, and we work together to not only provide the services for the city, but provide for ourselves in that process. And really recognizing that the goal isn't the war or the battle, but the I don't even want to say to some extent the war. It's that this will pass. We need to get through this. We need to treat each other appropriately and fairly and respectfully, and get back to the business of running this city at the highest possible level. So yeah, that is the goal that keeps it from just being it's easy to be mad and it's easy to stay mad, but that doesn't serve the interests of both sides in a
when you're
conversation.
actually trying to accomplish something, yeah.
Yeah.
Easy
I
to
hope that
be
answers
mad,
the
easy to
question.
stay mad. No, that's a great answer, and it's also a classically diplomatic answer to the question as well, which kind of like illustrates my point. Rob, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I think we'll just tell everybody to come out to the rally on at City Hall on Saturday at 2 p.m. here in Portland, Oregon. To whoever is actually watching from the Portland area on the internet, you never know. But for the folks in Germany, probably you can't come, But yeah,
Not with the airlines the way they are right now.
no, don't try it. You'll never get here on time. Yeah. Take care, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And that was Rob Martineau from Ask Me. I hope to see folks at the rally on Saturday here in Portland, Oregon. And whether you're in Portland, Oregon, or not, I thought that after talking with Rob, I would. Well, I'm going to be singing at the rally on Saturday, which is how I actually heard about it happening, because one of the organizers contacted me and said, "Can you come sing at the rally?" And I really like it when things happen that way. It's very direct and saves me from having to find out what's going on. My headphone came off here. What is the problem here? Here we go. Okay. Huh? Oh, there's still no noise. Aha. I've been outsmarted by my smart headphones. It has a lock on it. It has a lock, like on the thing where you put in the headphone cable. And if you don't lock it, then it can just fall out. So. But I was figuring on a set that I might do at the rally, if I, to probably more songs than I'll actually do at the rally, but just in case, it's always good to have songs prepared. When you're working 2 jobs and living in a tent, when a house costs $1 million and you can't pay the rent, when politicians say they'll help but it keeps getting worse each time the landlord lobby pulls the strings of the purse, when the human right to housing isn't even part of the debate, you're living in a failed state. Millions of citizens are spending half their lives locked up in a prison for trying to survive. When laws must be broken just to have a place to stay. When the prisons pay the senators to look the other way. If you have to be a criminal to put food upon your plate, you're living in a failed state. When you're facing climate breakdown, when trees are all on fire, when half the country's underwater, when a climate change denier runs the nation, and the opposition party votes for oil rigs and pipelines, it's not so much a country as it is a corporation buckling under its weight. You're living in a failed state. When your nation is an empire facing daily blowback, and the only thing your leaders can think to do is attack, bipartisan consensus that we need to spend $700 billion before the year's end on a military budget to make America great, you're living in a failed state. Every day some psycho with a gun has to open fire on a crowd before it's done. When a music festival becomes a free fire zone, and all they can say is it's okay now, he was acting alone. Buy some armor, pray to God, and hide behind the gate. You're living in a failed state. You're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. And then next in the set list, in the Saturday 2 p.m. at City Hall strike in solidarity with city workers set list, gather round, all you workers, whether you have a job or not. You who pick the tomatoes, you who grow the pot, you who stay home to raise the children, you that record the sound, you who flip the burgers, all you workers, gather round. Gather round, all you workers, all of you who write the code, you who teach the children, you who pave the roads, you who run the freight trains wherever they be bound, you who drive the buses, all you workers, gather round. Gather round, all you workers struggling to pay the rent. You who work a second job and wonder where all the time went. You there in the sleeping bags, shivering on the ground, in the houses, on the sidewalks, all you workers gather round. Gather round, all you workers, all you actors on the screen, you who point the cameras and write for magazines, you who launch the missiles, you who fire from the ground, you who fly the helicopters, all you workers gather round. Gather round, all you workers, gather round, and you will know that gathered all together we can vanquish any foe. As sure as we're made of water, so history has found. The workers have the power, if all we workers gather round. Let's see here. Just gotta take this hoodie off. If I were Mr. Rogers, I'd describe what I was doing, but sticking with the protest at City Hall at 2 p.m. on Saturday, solidarity with the city workers set list. They're essential workers, so many of these people. It's been a year since the virus arrived. A year since in this country 500,000 died. A year since all the borders were starting to be sealed. A year since the hospitals were sprouting in the fields. No question for anyone living around here. It's been a year. It's been a year since the cafes all closed, since the dates on the calendars froze. As the windows turned to plywood and the plywood turned to art, and unless you were essential or worked in a food cart, then you just had to cope with the anxiety and fear. It's been a year. It's been a year since the wheels in motion led to an uprising on each side of the ocean, exposed by the pandemic, by inequality, by 929 of the neck beneath the knee. A time of counter demos, for a while a coup scene near. It's been a year. It's been a year since canceling the rent. A year since the last of the money was spent, since so many saw we're all vectors for disease and there is such a thing as society. Since the words mutual aid became ones you'll commonly hear, along with grim milestone, it's been a year. And that album of that title got taken down from Spotify, but it's still on Bandcamp. It'll be back up on Spotify eventually. Good to see everybody out there. I can see comments if anybody's got anything to say. The comments so far are lovely. And here's another song I was planning on singing if I were to take up half the, rally or whatever, on Saturday, 2 p.m. in front of City Hall here in Portland in solidarity with the city workers who are possibly going to be going on strike. It's at moments like these, everything is in the air. Possibilities, nowhere and everywhere. Let's do the song properly. Take two. It's at moments like these, everything is in the air. Possibilities are nowhere and everywhere. Gotta break a law, break a bone to set it. Now all we are is broke. A lot of folks are saying it's time to be woke. And they're not talking about microaggressions, but the really big ones. The basic assumptions, like the planets circling suns, but there are no natural laws that built your mansions or your tents. These are creations of society, just like mortgages and rent. It's a future of uncertainty, but our liberation can only be as free as our imagination. You were born and raised to believe it's sacrosanct that whoever has a whole lot of money in the bank deserves to then live off the wealth from the houses that they own, and if they raise your rent you can move or take out a loan. Then how can you demand your human rights if you don't believe you have any, as if you deserve your plight? But if things were hard before, now the system has flatlined. Time for those basic rights to be redefined. It's a future of uncertainty, but our liberation can only be as free as our imagination. All these vaunted freedoms added to the Constitution as an afterthought after Shays' Rebellion did not include the right to land or the right to eat, or the right for human beings not to be dying on the street. It's moments like these, standing on the edge, that we might catch the strongest breeze to land furthest from the ledge. We can fly, all you need is wings. We can house and feed each other. Together we can do anything. It's a future of uncertainty, but our liberation can only be as free as our imagination. It's at moments like these, everything is in the air. The possibilities are nowhere and everywhere. There's Jamie Partridge. Hello, Jamie. He's the one who told me about this protest coming up on Saturday at City Hall at 2 p.m. Here in Portland, Oregon. And it was a pleasure talking to Rob Martineau. And if you want to see more of Rob, as well as see Jamie and me and lots of other folks, then come to City Hall here in Portland, Oregon at 2 p.m. on Saturday and stand in solidarity with the workers of this parsimonious municipality. That's my new tongue twister. Parsimonious municipality. That'll be my ESL tongue twister when I next have a class. I've never had a class, but I fantasize about teaching ESL, and if I did, they'd all have to learn how to say parsimonious municipality 10 times fast. I'd be a cruel ESL teacher. Fifth month of the year, on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. You'll still see people marching in every corner of the earth. St. John to Santiago, Kerala to Perth, all keeping alive the fantasy, what could happen down the line when the workers of the world combine. You can see us gathering early in the morn. Some are celebrating the shackles we have shorn, while so many billions are just waiting for the moment that we might stop losing the class war. When someday we can all say, yeah, we're doing fine. When the workers of the world combine. When that time arrives, maybe it looks like May Day, like a festival comes home and doesn't go away. Every race and gender, every walk and station, with the working class united, every land and nation. Then just watch what happens when we follow the same sign. When the workers of the world combine. Fifth month of the year, on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. And then a little labor history here. I mean, I don't suppose I'll be taking up this much time at the rally on Saturday, but this is my City Worker Solidarity, 2 p.m. Portland at City Hall this Saturday rally practice set for the live stream. And this is 102 and a half years ago. There was a monumental strike. War came, men were drafted, many never made it back. Those who did discovered in their absence they got the sack. Tenements and squalor, both rats and people getting sick. What they had in common, life was short, death was quick. No one had a plan, what they were going to do. When all the men came back home and the ranks of the unemployed grew. The way the people had to live was no life at all, but it still came as a surprise. How many answered the call? If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. City leaders and newspapers, in many ways they tried to do everything they could to widen the divide between good Canadians and those they called alien scum, between those who missed conscription and those who beat the war drum. But when the veterans marched in Winnipeg, they marched for everyone, under the banner of the working class, the one big union. Everybody left their jobs, whether organized or not. Even the policemen walked away, refused to embrace the rot. If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. The mayor deputized the scabs. Soon they shot 2 men who died in the city center on the hour when the scabs rampaged through the city, attacking anyone in the street, trapping people in alleyways, not even allowing them to retreat. Soldiers occupied the city. People hadn't eaten in weeks. The prospects for victory began to look bleak. People went back to their jobs, if indeed they even could. The bosses said they'd seek revenge, and many of them would. If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. Strike leaders were imprisoned, from where several were elected to the Canadian Parliament. And a monument was erected at Main and Portage, where a streetcar was overturned, driven in by strike breakers on the spot where it was burned. It was a century ago, but life is often still defined by which side you were on. On that picket line, was your grandpa shot in the heart, or did they break his leg when the working class rose up and shut down Winnipeg? If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. If you weren't there, you'll never know just what it was like when the whole city went on strike. Canadian labor history. Somebody's happy to hear a little. Well, that makes me want to do a little more Canadian labor history. Now, this next song, this is also Canadian labor history, but it's not necessarily related to the protest at City Hall at 2 p.m. on Saturday here in Portland. But it is nonetheless perhaps a relevant song to do on the week of the anniversary of the January 6th events, because they keep on talking about it a lot. All the politicians, they like to make reference to the last time there were shots fired in the Capitol building and all that. This is a song about that last time. August 1814. Robert Ross was from Rostrevor. He was born in County Down. His family was given land there by the British Crown. He was a man born of the gentry, born with wealth and fame, but he joined the British Army to serve his queen and make his name. in the Napoleonic Wars. He fought in many lands, in Holland and in Spain, in the far-off Egyptian sands. He was wounded there in battle, came back to fight another day, and he was sent off to attack the USA. York had been sacked and burned by invading Yankee men, but the Canadians regrouped, chased the Yankees home, and then the British Navy made its way to the shores of D.C. town, where General Ross burned the White House down. The year was 1814, the U.S. was in retreat. It was a Canadian victory, an American defeat. Without the French to help them, they got their ass whipped by the crowd when General Ross burned the White House down. The place had just been constructed only 12 years before, but it had to be rebuilt soon after this disastrous war. The president turned tail and ran like a raggedy clown when General Ross burned the White House down. He was killed a few months later. Irish rebels stopped him in his tracks. He was buried in Nova Scotia, in the town of Halifax. He might have been forgotten, but he'll forever be renowned. He's the man who burned the White House down. He's the man who burned the White House down. And let's see. We'll get back to the more of the subject closer to at hand. Here's a song about the first person that I know of who died of COVID-19 while being an essential worker in the U.S. driving a bus in Detroit. He got sick in March 2020, died at the beginning of April. His name was Jason Hargrove. Pandemic is spreading, the health system's collapsing. You can watch it all unfolding on the screen. If you're afraid to go outside, enough groceries to hide, it may have been weeks since you have seen someone you can touch, and you miss it so much as you wonder what might happen next. Like when your savings run out and the choice is all about what kind of help you might be able to expect. Or perhaps when COVID arrived, while some struggled to survive, you were what they call essential. It didn't take long to see you got that wrong. The word they really meant was expendable. It didn't take long to see there was no emergency. Plans in place for something which all the scientists knew was just a matter of when there'd be a pandemic again. And the kleptocrats in power didn't have a clue. Otherwise, why did Jason Hargrove die? Because he kept keeping on, waking before dawn to do his part for society. Jason drove his bus, he didn't even make a fuss at the time of green propriety. Somebody coughed, the virus was off. Not 2 weeks later, Jason would be dead. What if he had protective gear with sick passengers so near, with no barrier to protect his head? Why did Jason Hargrove die? Stay home, flatten the curve, they say, unless we need you to serve food for us or care for all the ill. In that case, we'll call you a hero, like the workers at Ground Zero, where one by one the cemetery filled. Now in every bus and truck, the drivers try their luck, essentially told, thank you for your service. If these were the front lines, no one put up any signs. Did anybody sign up for this? Why did Jason Hargrove die? Once the death rate peaks in days or months or weeks with each one of the virus's waves. Once we can take stock and recover from the shock of the sight of all of the mass graves. Will this be the impetus, this driver on a bus, along with so many, many more, The nurses and the prisoners, seafarers and farm workers, what will they all die for? Why? Did Jason Hargrove die? Why? Did Jason Hargrove die? Well, it's been a pleasure. If you're tuning in late at the first 20 minutes or so, I was talking with Rob Martineau, one of the Ask Me union representatives of the movement that is part of the potential strike that may be happening among the municipal workers in this parsimonious municipality here in Portland, Oregon. And there's going to be a rally at City Hall at 2 p.m. on Saturday. And I'll be there with this mandola and hope to see you there as well. If you're, whenever it is you're tuning in, if you want to, this will be archived on the video section of KBOO's Facebook page, as well as on Popular Resistance and my own Facebook page and my YouTube channel, Twitter channel, Twitch channel, and it will be also up as a podcast if you look for it, This Week with David Rovics, wherever podcasts are found. Do one more song and hope to see local folks on Saturday at 2 p.m. at City Hall. Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell, of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 My daddy was a miner, I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? 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 I hear in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? 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 Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us working folks ain't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? 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 So shoulder to shoulder, in union we will stand. We'll beat the scabs and bosses, so come and lend a hand. Which side are you on? 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 Solidarity, fellow workers. If you're local in Portland, Oregon, I'll see you on Saturday at City Hall at 2 p.m. in solidarity with the city workers in this parsimonious municipality who should be going on strike anytime soon if they want to get the goods, because direct action gets the goods. You know that, right? History proves it. Even recent history proves it. Keep on keeping on. Till next time. Bye for now.